Welcome to At the Lamb's High Feast. I'm Father Timothy Eck. This week we celebrate the 6th week of Ordinary Time on February 15th, 2026. You can find today's readings in the show notes. May the Lord who feeds us at his altar bless you through his word.
If you choose, you can keep the commandments. God has set before you fire and water, life and death. To whichever you choose, stretch forth your hand. The picture of moral action that we receive from Sirach is not one of moral indifference nor some sort of determinism. Instead, God reminds us that our choices matter and that we truly make them. This is part of the glory and weight of being made in the image and likeness of God. In 1 billion years, most of what we worry about will be gone. But in 1 trillion years, the moral choices you made on an ordinary Tuesday will still resound in eternity. And when we realize that our ordinary actions echo into eternity, something in us resists. We try to shrink back and to cry that this is impossible. We say that God has called us to a height too great, to an excellence beyond our strength. For this reason, Sirach said, if you choose, you can keep the commandments. God does not command the impossible. Starting at baptism, he gives the grace to do what he commands. No one is fated to mortal sin. We are not trapped by personal temperament or culture. Yet so often we masquerade our resignation to these things as humility. Or we'll say, it's just too hard. And this becomes the excuse to continue in the evil that destroys us. And against the lie that our sin is inevitable, Sirach says, no one does the Lord command to act unjustly. When we look at the laws of God, we can often think that he is out to get us. How could we not possibly transgress them? However, our readings are clear. God gives the law to save, not condemn. The divine law teaches us what leads to the fullness of life and what poisons it. And if the law was mere restrictions or traps, then Psalm 119, which we recited today, would make no sense. For we said in our refrain, blessed are they who follow the law of the Lord. Law and happiness are not opposites. God's commandments are given for our flourishing. But if that is true, why does obedience so often feel like loss? Why does God's law feel like limitation rather than freedom? St. Paul tells us today that there is a wisdom that belongs to this age, a wisdom which crucified the Lord of glory. What appears enlightened to this age is in fact blindness before divine wisdom. The wisdom of this age tells us that freedom means defining and asserting ourselves. God's wisdom reveals that freedom is found in the receiving of the gift of our identity from him and making a self-gift back to God. That is why the psalmist prays, open my eyes that I may consider the wonders of your law. Give me discernment that I may observe your law and keep it with my whole heart. He prays this not because the law is unclear, but because our hearts are shrouded by the darkness of sin and need to be illuminated by God. Christ then in our gospel reveals the depths of this law. Unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. This is not about multiplying rules, making it more complex. It's about purifying the heart. Christ moves beyond the simple judgment of external actions and looks to their sources. Murder? What is the anger that was building and dwelling in the heart? Adultery. What was the lust that led to it? False promises. Why are we duplicitous? Where do the lies come? The real battleground of morality is in here, in the interior. Christ is not satisfied with the morality that remains upon the surface. He demands the conversion of the whole person, body and soul, because it's only then that we live and flourish. It does not mince words, no broker peace with sin, but instead says, if your right hand causes you to sin, tear it out, throw it away. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. He's not calling for the mutilation of the body. He's calling for surgery of the soul. We cannot make peace with even a single sin and say, I'll stop being lustful and resentful, but I'll hold on to that anger. At the end of our lives, we will not be handed some scorecard where we just hope for a passing grade, that we have not lost too many points along the way. Sin is not merely breaking a rule. Sin is the rejection of friendship with God. It is the rejection of the only path to your happiness. To willingly cling to sin, particularly grave sin, is to cling to rejecting God and life. Our readings then are timely as we begin Lent this Wednesday. Lent is not a time for just cosmetic approvals, doing nice things that we can be seen. It's a season of surgery. And so what then is our operation plan? First, acknowledge just how skilled we have become at negotiating and justifying our sin. I'm not perfect. I try to be a good person, but I'm not really that bad. I compare myself to others just so that way I can be justified, or at least I'm not as bad as them. I have my faults, but I'm not them. We rename our sins. We don't have to confront them. We just call it something else, something that's more polite to say in common society. It's fine. My conscience doesn't twinge nearly as much. Instead of that, well, stop. Stop negotiating with the sin. Stop negotiating with those rehearsed angers that replay at night that only fuel your resentment. Stop those looks, those situations, using those apps, those conversations you already know weaken your resolve and then lead you into sin. Stop telling yourself those half-truths, those self-soothing good qualities you hide behind to justify certain behaviors. And then make deliberate acts of trust that the obedience to God's commandments leads to life, even when it feels like loss. Spend time meditating upon the truth that God's law does not diminish your freedom, but it frees you from what enslaves. Pray from Psalm 119. Open my eyes that I may consider the wonders of your law. Give me discernment that I may observe your law and keep it with all my heart. And then finally, ask the Lord to show you what needs to be cut out of your life. And do not turn away from what he shows you. For before you are fire and water, life and death. Christ does not lower the standard of holiness, but instead raises it. Not to harm you, but because he longs to raise you to a higher glory. The question is not whether the command is demanding. The question is whether you trust the one who gives it, the one who stretched out his hands. So stretch out your hand and choose.